They secretly hate you. When you start winning, you thought success would make people respect you. You thought that if you worked harder, became smarter, more disciplined, more focused, people would naturally celebrate your transformation. That the world rewards growth. That your friends would admire your ambition. That your family would feel proud watching you evolve into someone stronger. But then, something strange happened. The moment you started winning, the atmosphere changed. Not dramatically, not openly, quietly. The smiles became tighter. Conversations became colder. Compliments started sounding rehearsed. Some people stopped calling entirely. Others suddenly became experts at reminding you who you used to be. And the most disturbing part is this: you could feel it before you could explain it. Something invisible shifted the moment you stopped being harmless. Because success does not only change your life, it changes your relationship to other people's insecurities. You begin noticing subtle reactions that were never there before. Friends who once encouraged you now respond with silence. People who ignored your potential suddenly criticize your confidence. The same ambition that was once called dreaming is now called arrogance. And slowly, a terrifying realization begins to emerge. Most people do not hate failure. They hate the mirror your success becomes, because your growth forces people to confront something psychologically unbearable, their own abandoned potential. You become evidence. Evidence that change was possible. Evidence that discipline mattered. Evidence that excuses were not permanent. Evidence that fear can be defeated. And that is difficult for people to live beside, especially those who built their identity around staying the same. You see, human beings are far less rational than they appear. We like to believe we support greatness, ambition, and transformation. Society constantly tells us to be exceptional, to follow our dreams, to become the best version of ourselves. But reality tells a darker story. People love the idea of your success until it starts rearranging social hierarchy. Because the moment you evolve, relationships change automatically. The friend who once felt superior to you now feels uncertain. The group dynamic begins to shift. Your discipline becomes an accusation. Your confidence becomes uncomfortable. Your independence becomes threatening. And suddenly, your growth no longer feels inspiring to others. It feels personal. This is not paranoia. It is one of the oldest psychological patterns in human history. From childhood social circles to political systems, human groups have always punished deviation. Tribes survived through predictability and conformity. Individuals who changed too quickly disrupted emotional balance. Even ancient societies often treated exceptional individuals with suspicion before admiration, because improvement changes power, and power changes human behavior. That is why success often feels isolating, long before it feels rewarding. The higher you rise, the more you begin noticing invisible emotional contracts people had with you. Contracts you never consciously agreed to. Stay relatable, stay familiar, stay small enough to make everyone comfortable. And the moment you violate those expectations, tension appears. Not always hatred, sometimes disappointment, sometimes passive aggression, sometimes emotional distance disguised as being busy, sometimes concern disguised as criticism. But beneath all of it lies the same hidden fear. If you can change, what excuse does that leave for everyone else? Your growth exposes what others abandoned in themselves. That is why transformation unsettles people. Not because you became worse, but because you became unpredictable. And unpredictable people are difficult to control. You are not becoming arrogant. You are becoming difficult to control. There is a reason history repeats this pattern endlessly. Philosophers were mocked before they were respected. Innovators were ridiculed before they were celebrated. Artists were ignored before they became icons. Entire societies instinctively resist individuals who threaten collective comfort. Because human beings do not simply compete for resources. They compete for emotional stability. And nothing destabilizes people faster than watching someone they underestimated become powerful, especially when that person is you. But this raises an uncomfortable question. Why does another person's success feel so psychologically threatening in the first place? Why do friendships collapse after growth? Why do people secretly resent improvement? Why does winning create loneliness instead of connection? The answer lies deeper than jealousy. It lies inside the fragile architecture of identity itself. And once you understand that, you begin seeing human relationships very differently forever. The uncomfortable truth is that most human relationships are not built on honesty. They are built on balance. Invisible balance, a psychological equilibrium where everyone unconsciously agrees to play a role. One person becomes the successful one, another becomes the funny one, another becomes the reckless one, another becomes the dependable one, and sometimes, without realizing it, you become the struggling one. The one people secretly rely on to stay the same, because your identity gives stability to theirs. Human beings understand themselves comparatively. We rarely evaluate our worth in isolation. Instead, we measure ourselves against the people around us. Your income against your friend's income. Your appearance against your sibling's appearance. Your intelligence against your co-workers. Your discipline against the people in your circle. Psychologists call this social comparison theory. But long before psychology gave it a name, human beings were already living inside it. You may believe people see you objectively. Most do not. They see themselves reflected through you. That is why your transformation becomes emotionally disruptive. The moment you improve your life, you unknowingly force other people into self-evaluation. And self-evaluation is dangerous because it threatens the stories people tell themselves in order to remain comfortable. Your discipline confronts their excuses. Your confidence confronts their insecurity. Your progress confronts their procrastination. And even if they never say it aloud, your existence begins asking them a silent question. If change was possible for you, why not for me? That question creates psychological friction because most people do not actually want transformation. They want reassurance. Human beings often prefer predictable suffering over unpredictable growth. Misery can become familiar. Limitation can become identity. Even failure can become emotionally safe when it is shared collectively. That is why groups unconsciously resist individuals who evolve too quickly. You can see this pattern everywhere. A person loses weight and suddenly their friends begin mocking their diet, calling them obsessive or different now. Not because health is offensive, but because visible discipline exposes invisible neglect in everyone else. Someone becomes financially successful, and family members who once encouraged them suddenly become colder, more critical, or strangely distant. Not because money changes morality, but because status alters emotional hierarchy. A person becomes intellectually curious, starts reading deeply, questioning assumptions, speaking differently, and suddenly feels isolated in conversations that once felt effortless. Creative people experience this constantly. The moment their art begins gaining recognition, passive support turns into subtle hostility. Compliments become backhanded. Encouragement becomes silence. Old friends begin joking about their ambition as if ridicule can shrink them back into familiarity. And the terrifying part is this. Most resentment does not look like hatred. It looks like concern. Don't work too hard. You've changed. You think too much now. You're becoming obsessed. Remember where you came from. Sometimes envy speaks softly. Sometimes sabotage sounds loving. This is where human psychology becomes darker than most people are willing to admit, because envy rarely announces itself honestly. Very few people consciously say, "Your growth makes me feel inadequate." Instead, the emotion disguises itself as criticism, sarcasm, emotional withdrawal, or guilt manipulation. And often, the people doing this are not evil. They are protecting their identity. You must understand this carefully. When people become emotionally invested in a certain version of you, your transformation creates instability inside them. The role you once played in their psychological world begins disappearing, and people mourn the loss of emotional certainty more than they celebrate someone else's evolution. This instinct is ancient. For most of human history, survival depended on group cohesion. Tribes functioned through predictability and hierarchy. Individuals who rose too quickly, challenged norms, or disrupted social equilibrium could threaten collective stability. Conformity was safety. Deviation created tension. That instinct still exists today. Modern society appears individualistic on the surface, but psychologically, human beings still fear being left behind by their own tribe. That is why people can forgive your pain faster than they forgive your potential. Pain is relatable. Potential is confrontational. A struggling version of you makes people feel comfortable. A powerful version of you forces re-evaluation, and re-evaluation is exhausting. Think about the last time you genuinely changed, not superficially, truly changed. Who became uncomfortable? First, who started acting differently? Who became distant? Who subtly tried to pull you backward because those reactions reveal something most people never realize? Some relationships were never built on who you could become. They were built on who you used to be. One of the most dangerous misunderstandings about human nature is the belief that resentment always looks aggressive. It rarely does. In modern society, people are trained to hide hostility behind performance. Open jealousy is socially embarrassing. Open hatred damages reputation. So resentment evolves. It becomes quieter, smarter, more socially acceptable. It hides behind smiles. That is why some of the most psychologically complex betrayals happen in environments that appear supportive on the surface. People congratulate you publicly while privately. Hoping you fail, friends encourage your dreams, only while those dreams remain unrealistic. Relatives praise your ambition until your progress begins exceeding theirs. Peers disappear the moment your confidence becomes undeniable, and because none of this is spoken directly, you begin questioning yourself instead. Maybe you are imagining it, maybe you are becoming arrogant, maybe success changed you. But often, what changed was not your character, it was your position in the social hierarchy. You see, most relationships contain invisible power dynamics, emotional dependence, validation exchange, status equilibrium. Human beings constantly negotiate significance within social groups, even unconsciously. The moment you evolve beyond the role people assign to you, those dynamics destabilize, and instability makes people behave strangely. Some become colder, some become competitive, some become performatively supportive, some become overly critical, some simply vanish without explanation, because not everyone connected to your journey is connected to your future. Some people clap because everyone else is clapping. That is the social. Masked performative support is one of the most psychologically unsettling aspects of human interaction because it creates emotional confusion. People rarely sabotage directly. They sabotage subtly enough to preserve plausible deniability, discouragement disguised as realism, sarcasm disguised as humor, distance disguised as busyness, guilt disguised as love. You work too much. You've changed. You think you're better than us now. You used to be more fun. Notice how these statements rarely attack success itself. They attack the transformation required to achieve it, because your growth changes more than your circumstances. It changes your accessibility. Your emotional dependency decreases. Your need for approval weakens. And for some people, that feels like loss of control. This is why, the moment you stop needing validation, certain individuals become uncomfortable around you. The moment you stop seeking permission to evolve, you become psychologically dangerous. Not dangerous because you harm people. Dangerous because you can no longer be emotionally managed through approval, guilt, or fear of rejection. And human beings are deeply disturbed by people they cannot psychologically predict. This is where darker social dynamics begin emerging. Throughout history, thinkers like Niccolo Machiavelli observed that proximity does not always equal loyalty. People remain close to rising individuals for many reasons: access, influence, self-interest, protection, status association. Not every smile is trust. Not every compliment is admiration. Not every supporter wants you to surpass them. Some simply want proximity to your potential without confronting their own lack of action, and modern society amplifies this phenomenon. Social media especially has created a culture of public performance where appearances matter more than sincerity. People learn to imitate support because support itself has become socially valuable. Publicly celebrating someone costs nothing emotionally, but internally accepting another person's transformation is far more difficult, especially when that transformation reflects your own stagnation. This creates a strange contradiction in human behavior. People admire ambition from a distance, but resist it up close, because distance removes comparison. Up close, your discipline becomes evidence, your confidence becomes contrast, your growth becomes pressure, and pressure reveals character. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it is calculation. Sometimes people withdraw emotionally, not because they dislike you, but because your presence forces uncomfortable self-awareness. They begin measuring their life against yours unconsciously. Every achievement you make reopens conversations they buried inside themselves years ago, dreams they abandoned, risks they avoided, versions of themselves they betrayed. And rather than confront that grief honestly, many people attempt to emotionally reduce the person triggering it, not through dramatic betrayal, but through small psychological cuts repeated. Over time, a dismissive joke, a delayed response, a lack of enthusiasm, an absence during important moments support that disappears. The moment results appear, quiet betrayals, the kind that leave no evidence but change everything. And once you begin recognizing these patterns, another realization emerges. This behavior is not limited to friendships or families. Entire systems operate the same way, because societies, institutions, and power structures also fear individuals who stop seeking permission to become powerful. The deeper you study human behavior, the more unsettling one realization becomes. It is not only individuals who resist transformation. Systems do too. Entire societies are structured around predictability. Institutions survive through stability. Governments, workplaces, social groups, even cultural norms all function more efficiently when people behave in psychologically manageable ways. This does not require a secret conspiracy. It is simply the natural tendency of systems to preserve themselves, and independent people are difficult to preserve. History has always treated disruptive minds with suspicion before admiration. Human civilization romanticizes rebels after they are dead, but while they are alive, society usually experiences them as threats. Philosophers who questioned accepted morality were exiled or condemned. Inventors were mocked before their ideas became profitable. Artists died unrecognized before later generations called them geniuses. Whistleblowers were punished not always because they were wrong, but because they disrupted institutional comfort. Human beings claim to value truth, but psychologically, most people value stability first. That is why thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche spent much of their lives isolated. Nietzsche understood something deeply uncomfortable about society. People often prefer comforting illusions over liberating truths. A difficult truth demands transformation. An illusion allows continuity, and continuity feels safe. Arthur Schopenhauer observed similarly dark patterns in human nature. He believed envy was one of the most powerful hidden emotions governing social behavior. Not open hatred, but quiet resentment toward anyone whose existence exposed the limitations of others. Even Niccolo Machiavelli understood that power structures survive through perception management. Systems reward obedience not because obedience is noble, but because predictability is useful. A predictable person is easy to govern. Independent mind is not, and modern society has perfected the art of making conformity feel voluntary. Look closely at the world around you. Social media constantly preaches individuality while algorithmically rewarding imitation. Millions of people desperately attempt to appear unique, using the exact same trends, opinions, aesthetics, and behaviors. What appears rebellious is often carefully optimized conformity, disguised as self-expression. Even outrage becomes standardized. People are encouraged to think emotionally, react instantly, and move collectively. The system does not always need to suppress independent thought aggressively. Often it simply buries it beneath distraction, entertainment, and social pressure, because distracted people rarely question structure, and questioning structure changes power dynamics. The same pattern exists inside workplaces. Organizations often claim to reward innovation, yet many punish individuals who think too independently. Why? Because genuine independent thinking introduces unpredictability. A highly obedient employee is usually safer institutionally than a highly intelligent but uncontrollable one. Brilliance without compliance unsettles hierarchy. You can observe this socially as well. Friend groups often resist radical self-improvement because transformation disrupts emotional symmetry. If one person becomes significantly more disciplined, ambitious, self-aware, or emotionally independent, the entire group unconsciously feels pressure to evolve too, and pressure creates resentment. So groups often negotiate invisible emotional contracts. Stay small, you stay small, and nobody feels threatened. These contracts are rarely spoken aloud, yet they quietly govern human relationships everywhere. Families maintain them, friendships maintain them, entire cultures maintain them. That is why mediocrity often becomes socially reinforced, not because people consciously worship weakness, but because mutual limitation creates emotional comfort. Shared stagnation feels bonding. Shared excuses feel compassionate. Shared avoidance feels normal, but the person who breaks that pattern changes the emotional atmosphere immediately. The disciplined person makes indulgence feel visible. The courageous person makes passivity feel obvious. The self-aware person makes denial uncomfortable, and discomfort always seeks relief, sometimes through mockery, sometimes through dismissal, sometimes through social isolation. This is why highly independent individuals often experience a strange psychological tension with society itself. The more clearly you begin seeing social conditioning, the harder it becomes to participate unconsciously. You notice how identities are rewarded and punished, how personalities adapt to survive socially, how people suppress authentic thoughts to maintain belonging, how institutions subtly encourage dependency while publicly celebrating freedom. And once you notice these patterns, something inside you changes permanently. You begin asking dangerous questions. How much of your personality was chosen? And how much was socially rewarded? How many opinions are truly yours? How many ambitions were inherited? How many fears were conditioned into you before you were old enough to question them? Because most people never consciously build themselves. They are socially assembled, reward by reward, punishment by punishment, approval by approval. Over time, many individuals become psychologically dependent on acceptance without realizing it. They learn to avoid transformation because transformation risks social friction. It risks criticism, isolation, misunderstanding, so they remain emotionally manageable, predictable, safe, controllable. But the moment someone begins thinking independently, improving relentlessly, or refusing emotional conformity, society responds with subtle resistance, not always because the system is evil, but because every system, instinctively protects equilibrium, and equilibrium fears people who no longer need permission to become powerful. There is a part of transformation nobody warns you about. The loneliness, not the dramatic kind, not physical isolation. Something quieter than that. Something harder to explain. The feeling of standing in familiar rooms and realizing you no longer psychologically belong there. At first, the distance is subtle. Conversations that once energized you begin feeling repetitive. Habits that once felt normal now feel self-destructive. The things people complain about no longer entertain you. The ambitions that once seemed impossible now seem necessary, and slowly, without intending to, you begin separating from versions of life that once defined you. Growth changes your priorities, then it changes your behavior, then it changes your relationships, because transformation is not merely self-improvement, it is identity migration. You are moving psychologically from one version of yourself to another, and during that transition, there is often a painful period where you no longer fully connect to your past, but have not yet fully arrived at your future either. That space can feel unbearably lonely, especially because society often interprets loneliness as failure. If you are alone, people assume something went wrong. But sometimes, loneliness is not punishment. Sometimes it is evidence that your mind no longer fits inside environments that once required your smaller self. You are not alone because you failed. You are alone because you changed, and change creates separation. Naturally, different ambitions create distance, different habits create distance, different emotional tolerances create distance. The more self-aware you become, the harder it becomes to participate in unconscious behavior comfortably. You begin noticing manipulation faster. Superficiality becomes exhausting. Performative conversations drain you. You stop laughing at things you no longer find meaningful, and this creates a strange emotional contradiction. You become more connected to yourself, while simultaneously feeling less connected to certain people around you. That realization carries grief, real grief. Because growth is not just gaining something, it is surviving what you lose. You lose old identities, old coping mechanisms, old environments, sometimes old relationships, and perhaps most painfully, you lose emotional simplicity. Once awareness expands, it rarely contracts again. You begin recognizing patterns everywhere. The insecurity hidden beneath arrogance, the fear hidden beneath hostility, the validation hidden beneath performance. Human behavior becomes psychologically louder to you, and hyper-awareness is exhausting because now you see what you once ignored. You notice who only calls when they need validation, who disappears when you succeed, who subtly competes with you, who becomes uncomfortable when you speak confidently, who preferred the insecure version of you because it made them feel safer. But here is where many people become dangerous to themselves. They mistake awareness for superiority. This is the trap of cynicism. After enough betrayal, disappointment, or emotional isolation, it becomes tempting to believe everyone is fake. Everyone is manipulative. Everyone secretly resents you. But that perspective slowly poisons the mind. Not everyone hates your growth. Some people simply cannot follow where transformation leads. There is an important difference. Human beings grow at different psychological speeds. Some remain attached to environments, identities, or fears that you no longer resonate with. That does not automatically make them malicious. Sometimes it simply means your paths no longer psychologically align. Maturity is recognizing this without bitterness. Because true power is discernment, not paranoia. Discernment allows you to observe human behavior clearly without losing your humanity in the process. It allows you to recognize envy without becoming consumed by suspicion. It allows you to establish boundaries without emotionally isolating yourself from the world. And that balance matters, because people who become too cynical eventually imprison themselves emotionally. They stop trusting, stop connecting, stop opening themselves to meaningful relationships. Their awareness becomes armor so heavy that it crushes intimacy itself. But intelligent growth does not turn you cold, it turns you clear. You stop forcing connections that no longer fit. You stop shrinking yourself to preserve comfort. You stop begging people to understand your transformation. And eventually, something unexpected happens. You become peaceful with being misunderstood, not because rejection no longer hurts, but because you finally understand that every transformation creates distance between who you were and who you are becoming. You mourn people who are still alive because the connection no longer is. And yet, despite the loneliness, despite the emotional friction, despite the quiet grief of outgrowing parts of your old life, you continue evolving anyway, because somewhere deep inside, you realize something irreversible. A smaller life may feel socially comfortable, but it will slowly destroy your soul. After enough disappointment, most people make one of two mistakes. They either shrink themselves to regain acceptance, or they become consumed by resentment. One path destroys identity, the other destroys peace. Real strength exists somewhere between those extremes, because true power is not becoming emotionally cold. It is becoming emotionally independent. There is a difference. Cold people shut down emotionally because they fear pain. Powerful people remain emotionally aware without allowing emotions to control their judgment. They understand human nature clearly, but they do not become poisoned by it. That clarity changes everything. You stop expecting universal approval. You stop needing everyone to understand your vision. You stop explaining your transformation to people committed to misunderstanding it. And strangely, life becomes quieter after that. Not easier, clearer. You begin realizing how much emotional exhaustion came from trying to negotiate your growth with people who benefited from your limitations. The need to appear harmless, the need to stay relatable, the need to minimize your ambition so others feel comfortable. Eventually, something inside you asks a dangerous question. Who would you become if you no longer needed permission to evolve? Most people never ask themselves this honestly, because permission is psychologically addictive. Approval creates emotional safety. Human beings are conditioned from childhood to seek validation from authority, peers, institutions, and social groups. Good grades, good behavior, social acceptance, professional approval. Over time, many people lose the ability to distinguish authenticity from approval conditioning. They become experts at being accepted while remaining strangers to themselves. But transformation begins the moment external validation loses authority over your identity, not because validation becomes meaningless, but because it no longer controls your direction. This is one of the deeper insights hidden beneath the work of thinkers like Machiavelli. Machiavelli understood that human beings are heavily influenced by perception, fear, desire, and self-interest. Understanding those forces protects you from manipulation. But there is also danger in seeing human nature too darkly. If awareness turns into bitterness, clarity becomes distortion. Some people discover manipulation and become manipulative themselves. Some discover envy and become emotionally paranoid. Some discover power dynamics and lose the ability to trust entirely. That is not wisdom. That is psychological corruption disguised as intelligence. Real awareness makes you calmer, not crueler. The powerful are not always louder. Often, they simply see more clearly. They recognize insecurity without needing to attack it. They recognize manipulation without emotionally collapsing into it. They recognize envy without allowing it to define their relationships. And because of that clarity, they move differently, more selectively, more intentionally, more quietly. This is where boundaries become essential. Not walls. Walls isolate, boundaries protect emotionally. Intelligent people understand that not everyone deserves equal access to their inner world. Some people are meant for deep trust. Others are meant for distance. And maturity means learning the difference. Before betrayal forces the lesson violently, you stop oversharing your ambitions with people who secretly compete with you. You stop explaining your values to people committed to misunderstanding them. You stop expecting emotional maturity from individuals still controlled by insecurity. And perhaps most importantly, you stop shrinking yourself to maintain emotional comfort around others. Because once you understand these social dynamics, pretending becomes impossible. You can no longer unknow what you know. You begin seeing how often people betray themselves just to preserve belonging. How many lives are quietly built around fear of rejection? How many dreams die inside socially acceptable versions of people? And you realize something unsettling. Many individuals are not trapped by failure. They are trapped by emotional dependency on approval. That dependency controls careers, relationships, beliefs, personalities, entire identities. But the moment your self-worth becomes internally anchored, external pressure loses much of its power over you. That does not mean criticism stops hurting. It does not mean loneliness disappears. It does not mean betrayal suddenly becomes painless. It means those things no longer determine your direction. And that is freedom, not freedom as fantasy, freedom as psychological independence, the ability to observe social pressure without automatically obeying it, the ability to hear doubt without absorbing it, the ability to evolve without apologizing for becoming different. Because in the end, strength is not dominance. It is self-possession. It is the ability to remain connected to yourself in a world constantly trying to negotiate who you should be. And once a person achieves that, they become very difficult to control. In the end, success does not simply change your life. It changes how reality responds to you. The moment you begin evolving beyond the identity people assign to you, the social atmosphere shifts. Some relationships deepen, others fracture. Some people become inspired by your transformation. Others quietly resent it, and many will never fully understand why your growth affects them emotionally at all. But now you understand, it was never only about achievement, it was about disruption. Your growth disrupted expectations. Your confidence disrupted hierarchy. Your independence disrupted emotional control. And for many people, that disruption felt personal. That is why success often carries strange emotional side effects no one prepares you for. The distance, the silence, the subtle hostility, the feeling that certain people preferred the unfinished version of you. Not because they consciously wanted your suffering, but because your limitations made them feel psychologically safe. Every transformation creates witnesses. Some become inspired, others become threatened, and the painful part is that both reactions can come from people you love. But awareness changes how you carry that pain. You stop personalizing every reaction. You stop interpreting resistance as proof. You should shrink yourself again. You stop apologizing for becoming someone your old environment no longer recognizes. Because eventually, you realize something profoundly liberating. Human beings are complicated. Envy is ancient. Fear is ancient. Insecurity is ancient. Most people are fighting internal battles invisible even to themselves. Some resent you because your growth reminds them of abandoned dreams. Some distance themselves because your evolution forces self-reflection they are not ready for. Some criticize because criticism is easier than confronting their own fear of change. And once you understand this, hatred becomes less necessary. Clarity replaces bitterness. You begin seeing people more truthfully, not as villains, not as saints, just as human beings struggling with identity, comparison, fear, and the uncomfortable pressure of witnessing transformation up close, including you, because even now, there are probably areas of life where you feel threatened by someone else's growth. Areas where comparison creates insecurity. Areas where another person's discipline exposes your hesitation. That is part of being human. The difference is whether awareness controls you or frees you, because the goal was never to become paranoid, never to isolate yourself emotionally, never to see manipulation in every interaction. The goal is simpler than that. Stop abandoning yourself just to remain emotionally convenient for other people. Stop shrinking your intelligence to avoid intimidating others. Stop minimizing your ambition to preserve fragile relationships. Stop performing weakness so the world feels comfortable around you. You are not meant to spend your life negotiating your potential with people committed to remaining the same. And the moment you finally understand that, something inside you becomes calm. Not because the world suddenly changes, but because you stop asking permission to become who you were capable of becoming all along. The moment you stop shrinking for people, you discover who was only comfortable with your limitations. They do not always hate your success. Sometimes they hate the version of themselves it reminds them of, and that is the price of becoming someone they never expected you to be.